Beneath the arid terrain of Iran lies an ocean of hydrocarbon wealth that drives the nation's sovereign power. In early 2026, the country held approximately 209 billion barrels of proven crude oil reserves. That accounts for 12% of the global total, placing Iran behind only Venezuela and Saudi Arabia. Crude is extracted from Khuzestan province, but 90 to 95% of national exports funnel into Kharg Island, a 20-square-kilometer limestone rock in the Persian Gulf. This extreme concentration creates an economic gravity well. Iran's fiscal continuity depends entirely on these two export terminals. During the Iran-Iraq tanker war in the 1980s, these terminals survived repeated kinetic airstrikes. Today, the crisis-threatening Kharg Island does not rely on dropping a single bomb on the jetties. The current U.S. and Israeli naval blockade operates on a mathematical trap known as storage saturation. By simply severing the maritime supply lines, they can force the island's storage tanks to fill to maximum capacity, crippling the industry from within. To see exactly how halting ships out in the open ocean inflicts permanent geological damage on subterranean oil fields, we have to look at the uncompromising physical geography of the Persian Gulf. The Iranian mainland possesses hundreds of miles of coastline, but it is largely characterized by shallow, silty waters. This bathymetric cross-section illustrates the problem. Ultra-large crude carriers require 30 meters of draft clearance, meaning they run aground near the mainland. Kharg Island, 25 kilometers offshore, is perfectly positioned adjacent to a natural deep-water trench, providing necessary depth to dock safely. The island offers a second critical geographic advantage, a central limestone plateau 62 meters above sea level. By placing storage tanks on this elevation, engineers created a gravity-fed loading system. Crude oil flows downhill directly into waiting tankers, bypassing the need for shoreline pumping systems. Recognizing the extreme risk of relying on a single geographic node, Tehran invested $2 billion to build the Jask oil terminal in the Gulf of Oman, theoretically bypassing the Strait of Hormuz entirely. The project failed to yield a viable alternative. Plagued by pipeline leaks and failing offshore moorings, Jask handles an estimated 0.3 million barrels per day, a fraction of its intended capacity. Because of the shallow mainland coastline and the operational failure at Jask, Kharg Island remains the irreplaceable linchpin of Iranian crude exports. The island's natural bathymetry houses an engineered operational core divided into two massive terminals. On the eastern side lies the T-jetty. Stretching over 1,800 meters with 10 berths, it serves as the workhorse, loading multiple vessel classes. The western coast hosts the Sea Island terminal. Sitting in the deepest waters surrounding Kharg, it is specifically equipped to load the ULCCs capable of moving over 2 million barrels in a single voyage. Combined, these two facilities can theoretically load up to 10 supertankers simultaneously, reaching an export capacity of 7 to 10 million barrels per day. Generating revenue from this capacity requires a buyer. In 2026, In March 2026, a coalition of U.S. and Israeli forces launched Operation Epic Fury, targeting that critical maritime link. The kinetic strikes focused entirely on the island's defensive umbrella, neutralizing advanced Russian-made S-400 batteries and indigenous Bavar 373 mobile surface-to-air missile systems. U.S. forces deliberately spared the export terminals and tank farms. The oil infrastructure was left completely intact. This decision was paired with Project Freedom, a naval blockade strictly targeting the empty Shadow Fleet tankers attempting to sail into the Persian Gulf to pick up crude. With production at 3.5 million barrels daily and no tankers offloading, crude stocks surged 6 million barrels in 1 week. Kharg's tanks hit 74% utilization, leaving under 3 million barrels of spare room. This gives operators barely 48 hours until total saturation. Engineers scramble to mitigate the bottleneck, filling onshore tank farms to their limits and reactivating 30-year-old decommissioned vessels to serve as floating storage. If these stopgap measures fail and storage hits 100%, the excess crude has nowhere to go. Operators will be forced to execute hard shut-ins at the extraction sites. The majority of Iran's output comes from the Khuzestan province, extracted from mature, fractured limestone reservoirs in the Asmari and Bengistan formations. Halting the flow in these aging fields degrades the subterranean pressure. A hard shut-in risks permanent, irreversible damage to the reservoir mechanics, potentially eliminating up to 500,000 barrels per day of future production capacity. By keeping the island's infrastructure intact while severing the maritime offtake, the blockade uses Iran's own oil against it, turning Kharg Island into a physical trap that drowns its upstream production capability. To defend this critical node from a ground seizure, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps relies on an extreme asymmetric naval strategy. The waters surrounding the island are patrolled by hundreds of fast attack craft armed with anti-ship cruise missiles, designed to swarm and overwhelm traditional Aegis combat systems. Beyond these surface patrols, intelligence indicates the IRGC has rigged manifold headers and subsea pipelines with explosive charges, creating a localized deadman switch. Detonating these suicide defenses in the event of an invasion would destroy the energy assets, but it would also trigger a catastrophic environmental chain reaction in the shallow waters of the Gulf. Spilled crude in this turbulent environment undergoes an emulsification process. It forms a water and oil mixture known as chocolate mousse, expanding the pollutant's volume by up to 4 times and increasing its viscosity 1,000-fold, making conventional mechanical cleanup impossible. Driven by the region's seasonal shamal winds, which can reach 20 meters per second, the toxic plume would be pushed directly south along the coastlines of Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain. The slick would directly intersect with the seawater intakes of the region's massive desalination plants, cutting off the primary freshwater source for over 100 million people. Because the Persian Gulf is a semi-enclosed estuary with a thermohaline flushing rate of 1.82 years, these contaminants would remain trapped in the basin, effectively poisoning the water supply for years.